Every action you take is a seed. You may not see it sprout for weeks, months, or even years, but the earth never forgets what you plant in it. Stay with me, because in a small village tucked between river and field, a shopkeeper named Govind was about to learn this truth. Not from a book, not from a teacher, but from the very choices he thought no one could see. The village of Sundarganj was the kind of place where mornings smelled like wood smoke and marigolds, where children ran barefoot along dust-red roads, and where everyone knew their neighbor's name and their neighbor's business. The weekly market was the heartbeat of this village. Farmers came with sacks of grain, potters brought clay vessels still warm from the kiln. And at the center of it all, Govind sat behind his wooden counter surrounded by brass weights, coiled rope, and burlap sacks of rice and lentils. Govind was a hard-working man. No one could question that. He opened his shop before the roosters stirred and closed it only when the oil lamps began to sputter. He had a wife, 2 children, and a modest home with a courtyard where a single mango tree grew. By all appearances, he was a man of simple dignity. But there was a shadow that lived in his hands. When no one was watching, or when he believed no one was watching, Govind tilted his brass scale. Just a little, just enough. A customer who paid for a full kilogram of rice received 900 grams. A farmer who brought wheat to sell received less than its honest weight. It was never dramatic, never obvious, just a slow, quiet theft that Govind had convinced himself was simply the cost of doing business. Everyone does it, he told himself each evening, counting his coins by lamplight. I am just surviving. I am just smart. His children needed new clothes for the harvest festival. His wife wanted a better cooking vessel. The roof needed thatsang. Govind looked at his tilted scale and saw not dishonesty. He saw a solution. Years passed like monsoon clouds, one season folding into another. Govind's shop grew. He expanded his inventory. He hired a young boy named Chotu to help carry sacks. From the outside, he looked like a man blessed by fortune. But a strange thing was quietly happening that Govind could not see. His reputation was changing shape, the way riverbanks erode, slowly, silently, until one day the water finds a different path entirely. Farmers began selling their grain to the merchant in the next town. Neighbors started walking further to buy their provisions. They never said anything to Govind's face. That is the nature of a village. People notice everything and say nothing until they have said everything to each other. Govind's short measures had become common knowledge. A quiet boycott had formed like fog. No single source, no single moment, just a growing distance. He was tired. He was confused. His hands trembled as he counted a day's earnings that seemed to shrink each week despite his same long hours. His shop, once crowded, now sat quiet by midday. Then came the day that changed everything. A merchant from a distant town arrived in Sundarganj, a large man with a cart full of imported goods, silk thread, glass bangles, and refined sugar. He approached Govind's shop and offered to supply him with these rare items at what seemed like an extraordinary price. Govind, desperate and hungry for the revenue, agreed immediately. He paid up front, a significant portion of his savings. The goods arrived 2 days later. Govind eagerly opened the first sack of sugar and found it was mixed with coarse sand. The silk thread unraveled after a single tug. The glass bangles were brittle as old clay. He had been given less than what he paid for. He had been cheated with short measure. Govind stood in his shop surrounded by worthless goods, and something inside him went very still. Not angry, not bitter, just very, very still. Because in that silence, a mirror appeared that he could not avoid looking into. He walked to his courtyard that evening and sat beneath the mango tree. The tree was old. It had given fruit for 20 years without a single complaint. It never demanded. It never deceived. It simply gave what it was. And in return, birds nested in its branches, children played beneath its shade, and the family ate from its harvest every season. Govind looked at that tree for a long time. A river that flows, reaches the ocean. A pond that stays still, slowly dries and disappears. His scale had been still for years, hoarding, taking, deceiving, and now his livelihood was drying up the same slow way. The next morning, Govind opened his shop. He called young Chotu over and handed him the brass scale that had served as his instrument of theft. "Throw this in the river," he said. He bought a new scale that same afternoon, balanced, honest, certified by the village elder. He began offering a small extra measure to every customer, a gesture of apology without words. It too, okay time. Trust does not return as quickly as it leaves. But slowly, the farmers came back. The neighbors returned. Word travels two ways in a village. It carries shame outward and carries integrity home. This ancient wisdom speaks to us today. In our modern world of daily transactions, subtle compromises, and small justifications, we face the same choice Govind faced at that tilted scale. We tell ourselves it's small. We tell ourselves no one notices. But the universe is an extraordinarily precise accountant. First, understand that every small dishonesty is a debt, not a gain. You may pocket the difference today, but interest accumulates in ways you cannot see. In relationships slowly cooling, in trust quietly withdrawing, in opportunities that choose a different door. Second, recognize that your reputation is not what you say about yourself. It is what your actions whisper when you believe the room is empty. The room is never empty. Third, remember that the fastest path is rarely the truest path. Govind spent years building a shortcut that eventually became a dead end. The longer road of integrity is shorter in every way that truly matters. Fourth, know that correction is always available. Govind did not lose everything permanently. He chose differently and the world responded differently. It is never too late to rebalance the scale. Ask yourself today, in your work, in your relationships, in the small moments when no one seems to be watching, are you tilting your scale? Because what you give to the world is exactly what the world measures back to you. What you offer in full measure returns to you in full. What you withhold with a tilted hand disappears from your life the same way. The scale is always balanced, always,